Many teams have had dodgy sponsors in Formula One's time, but these four, in my opinion, is something else. From Ponzi schemes to absolutely mental billion-dollar collapses, these are the deals that left everyone in the paddock wondering if anyone actually checks these companies before slapping their logos on the cars. So, '89 Formula One was insane with a bunch of new teams joining. One of these teams was Onyx, and don't get me wrong, they look decent on paper. They had this solid technical base, alright, drivers, but they did get themselves tangled up in one of the most bizarre sponsorship scandals ever. The main character in this story? Jean-Pierre Van Rossem, this absolutely mental Belgian bloke who ran Moneytron. Now, I'm not even joking when I say this. The man claimed he had a supercomputer that could predict the stock market. Insane, right? But here's the thing, people actually believed him. He managed to convince the Belgian royal family to invest in this thing. We're talking about a dude who built up a fortune of 860 million quid just by telling people his computer could print money. Now, Onyx wasn't some backmarker outfit when they started. They had Stefan Johansson, who'd driven for Ferrari and McLaren, and Bertrand Gachot, who was this promising young talent. But like every F1 team, they needed some serious cash to keep the lights on. That's when Van Rossem rocks up with his Moneytron empire. You've got to picture the scene in the paddock when Van Rossem showed up. This wasn't your typical F1 sponsor in a fancy suit. Picture this mad scientist-looking bloke with gray hair going everywhere, massive beard, looking like he just rolled out of bed and into a philosophy lecture. Stood out just a little among all the posh F1 types. The Onyx Ore 1 with its Ford engine wasn't half bad once they got it going. I mean, they couldn't even qualify for the first 3 races, which should have been a massive red flag. But then they managed to pull off something insane. Johansson grabs a podium in Portugal. Talk about a plot twist. But bloody hell, the chaos behind the scenes was something else entirely. Van Rossem was running around the paddock like a real lunatic. One day he's on Belgian TV shouting about this Porsche engine deal that wasn't even sorted yet. Porsche gets properly angry because you can't just go announcing deals that aren't done, right? What does Van Rossem do? Drives his Porsche to the town square and sets it on fire. You couldn't make this stuff up. But wait, it gets better. He starts calling FIA president Jean-Marie Balestre a Nazi and saying Bernie Ecclestone was running some mafia operation. Now, we all know Bernie was a bit crafty, but bloody hell, you can't just go saying that stuff. Got himself banned from races after that one. The team somehow managed 10th in the championship that year, but everything was falling apart. By 1990, the whole thing went properly wrong. Turns out Moneytron wasn't some magical money machine, just a massive Ponzi scheme. Van Rossem had been using new investors' cash to pay off the old ones. Classic stuff, really. The best bit? That fancy supercomputer lab with a special door that was supposed to be doing all this market prediction turned out to be a bloody broom cupboard. I'm not even joking. Van Rossem had this massive collection of over 100 Ferraris and everything, all bought with other people's money. He ended up getting 5 years in prison for the whole thing, which honestly seems a bit light considering he mugged off half of Belgium. Right, this one's a bit more recent, and bloody hell, it's probably the biggest financial disaster F1's ever been involved with. When Mercedes announced they were teaming up with FTX in 2021, everyone thought it was well smart. FTX had only been around since 2019, but they'd already become the 3rd biggest crypto exchange in the world. Quick weird side note, but it's mental how many crypto companies were throwing money at F1 back then. This wasn't just some small sponsorship deal where you stick a tiny logo on the car and call it a day. We're talking proper money here, tens of millions per year. FTX logos were plastered all over the Mercedes cars, driver suits, the lot. They were even doing this digital collectible stuff, NFTs and all that rubbish. The crypto lot were throwing money around like confetti. FTX even spent 135 million quid just to put their name on some basketball arena in Miami. Now, I've got to explain how mental this whole thing was. FTX had gone from nothing to being worth $32 billion faster than Max Verstappen on fresh softs. They were buying up struggling competitors left and right. Liquid Global, LedgerX, Blockfolio, you name it. They even had their own crypto token called FTT, because apparently making up your own money is totally fine these days. For Mercedes, this was meant to be their way of getting down with the kids, you know. All this crypto stuff was proper trendy, and Mercedes, being the smart lot they are, thought they'd get in on it. But then November 2022 hits and everything goes absolutely mental. Some genius leaks FTX's balance sheet, and bloody hell, we're talking $9 billion in liabilities and only $900 million in assets. Turns out the main man, Sam Bankman-Fried, or SBF as everyone called him because apparently typing out 3 words is too much effort, had been running one of the biggest financial scams we've seen. Here's where it gets proper mental. SBF was using FTX customer money to fund Alameda Research, which was making these absolutely ridiculous bets. No audits, nothing. They were just moving billions between companies like it was monopoly money. The whole thing collapsed in just 10 days. Proper speed run to bankruptcy, that was. SBF got himself arrested in December 2022, got released on a $250 million bond, largest in history, that then got found guilty of 7 different fraud charges in November 2023. Mans got himself 25 years in prison and had to pay back 11 billion quid. His parents even got done for nicking millions from the company. Of course, Mercedes had to quickly bin off all the FTX stuff before the Brazilian GP, which must have been proper awkward. Bit different from the usual sponsor drama of late payments, eh? The whole thing rattled F1. By 2022, nearly half the grid had crypto sponsors. Ferrari had this massive 30 million deal with Velas, Red Bull were in bed with Tezos, McLaren had about 5 different crypto partners. One by one, they all started quietly disappearing from the cars. Ferrari had to bin off their Velas deal in early 2023. Red Bull and Tezos went their separate ways. The mental thing is, at least there's a happy ending for the customers. FTX managed to recover about 16 billion quid, and I think they are paying them back this year. I don't really know at this point about this magic internet money, but if you do like F1, don't forget to subscribe. This one's probably my favorite tell. Enter Prince Malik Ado Ibrahim, claiming to be Nigerian royalty, shows up in F1 with this company called T-Minus. Now, Arrows weren't exactly swimming in cash at the time. They'd just lost sponsors like Danka and Zepta, and they were desperate for money. That's probably why they didn't ask too many questions when this supposed prince rocks up promising 125 million. T-Minus was the most confusing sponsor in F1 history, and that's saying something. First, it was meant to be an energy drink, right? But no one ever saw a single can of the stuff. Then it was supposedly a motorcycle brand, but funny enough, no one ever saw any bikes either. Eventually, they just gave up and said it was some sort of flexible branding concept, which is basically what you say when you've got nothing but want to sound smart. The Arrows A20, driven by Pedro de la Rosa and Toranosuke Takagi, wasn't half bad when it worked. They even managed to score points in Australia, with de la Rosa grabbing 6th. But without proper development money, they were going backwards fast. By mid-season, it was proper obvious the money wasn't coming. Prince Malik started missing races, probably because people were asking where the cash was. Morgan Grenfell Private Equity had to step in to keep the lights on. But by Hungary, Prince Malik was gone, and T-Minus with him. Turned out his royal wealth was about as real as Pastor Maldonado's ability to keep it out of the wall. The best bit? A few years later, this same bloke tries the same trick in NASCAR, calls himself Maverick Motorsports, ends up in jail for nicking nearly $1 million from a NASCAR team owner. Some people never learn, hey? The whole T-Minus saga probably wouldn't happen in modern F1 teams, do proper due diligence now. Well, except for the whole crypto thing we just talked about. But back then, if someone showed up with a nice PowerPoint presentation and promised millions, teams were ready to take the money. Sugarbook, Singapore GP 2018. Right, this one's a bit different, but equally mental. Sugarbook was this dating app, right? But not your regular Tinder sort of thing. This was for rich, older people looking to hook up with younger partners. And someone thought it would be a brilliant idea to sponsor an F1 party during the Singapore GP weekend. Bit dodgy if you ask me. They were trying to be all posh about it, saying it was about luxury lifestyle and exclusive connections, and all that rubbish. Started planning these fancy parties, targeting F1's rich crowd, thinking they'd fit right in with the sport's glamorous image. Because nothing says Formula One like a dating app for cash-hungry youngsters, right? The whole thing kicked off when people actually looked up what Sugarbook was. The Singapore Tourism Board, who'd initially included this party in their official GP stuff, had to do a proper U-turn, faster than Vettel in his prime. They quickly removed all mention of Sugarbook from their promotional materials, pretending they'd never heard of it. Look, F1's meant to be family-friendly and all that, and this one definitely raised a few eyebrows in the paddock. A bit different from your usual Red Bull and Shell sponsorships, innit? Though I suppose both involve people getting paid for questionable activities. I'll let you work that one out. The whole Sugarbook thing shows how desperate some F1 adjacent events can get for sponsors. What's mental is that this stuff keeps happening. You'd think after the first few times teams got burnt by dodgy sponsors, they'd do better checks. But now, every few years, some new company rocks up, promises loads of cash, and everyone acts surprised when it turns out to be a proper scam. And while you're down there in the comments, let me know what other F1 sponsorship disasters I missed. There's probably loads more. F1 teams will stick anything on their cars if you wave enough money at them. Subscribe!